Hey class, this is Mr. Cruz, your teacher. I'm going to try my second attempt at posting a video for you guys explaining book 17, 21, and 23. I'm going to do so in less time this time just because of the fact that I guess I don't want to spend as much time as I did the last video, given the fact that it was out, I think, like 30 minutes or something like that. But I feel like I could say it probably in less. And I also am a bit frustrated with technology today, but it's all right. It'll work out. So what I wanted to do was take a little bit of time to talk about book 17, but really books 21 and 23, though. 17 is when we kind of move on from the journey back home to Ithaca, and when we get back into Ithaca is where chapter 17 sort of takes off. You'll notice that a lot of some of the major themes that emerge from this particular section of the book are really related to the relationship between men and the gods. And so in book 17, what I wanted to do was talk a bit just about Odysseus is becoming a beggar and what that means for him as like the king of Ithaca. And the reason I wanted to bring this up particularly was because Odysseus becomes a beggar in the same kind of way. You can make a sort of allusion to the New Testament, where Jesus leaves his heavenly throne and he kind of moves into the neighborhood, right? And he becomes one of us. He lives as a fully human, right? A carpenter's son, someone who goes to the temple, someone who is, or rather goes to the synagogue, someone who participates in daily life and gets a sense of what it is like to live in this way. Odysseus, although he doesn't spend a long time doing this, but he does, however, get a sense of what it's like to be a beggar, a part of the life of Ithaca, as opposed to a king, right? And this is important because for him to make it back into the throne, he actually has to sort of become nobody to a certain extent. He has to become a nobody. He has to be the lowest of the low in terms of his status in the community of Ithaca. And so he becomes a beggar, and what he does is he sort of, I don't know, in the typical Odysseus-ian way, he doesn't quite act like a beggar all the time. You'll notice that he's like insulting people and sort of jabbing at people. And when I say jab, I mean like he kind of comes across as a bit arrogant, but this is part of his personality, and so this is kind of who he is and what he's setting out to go and reclaim his throne. But I want to jump really quick over to book 21, and I think it's really interesting. And partly because I'm not going to do a total summary. You all know that he ends up winning the competition. But I want to talk about this dichotomy, right? And when I say dichotomy, I mean a binary that's set up. So binary is two things, one on one side, the other on the other side. And so the binary sets up this thing called determination and free will. Okay, determination is typically what we say of as God determining one's steps, God decreeing one's steps, right? The Greek world is very determinative in the sense that the gods rule everything, right? Like, so think of Poseidon's role in the journey back home to Ithaca. Think about how the gods help with everything that goes on. At the end of book 24, there's a literary device. You guys didn't read book 24, I know that, but that's the end of the book, and we're kind of after the battle, and Odysseus and his father have like kind of reunited, and there's a little bit of a riot over all the people that Odysseus has killed in the battle, and Athena comes in and she creates peace by killing a few people that maybe have started this conflict, and then making everybody forget about everything that transpired in the battle. And in that way, Athena creates peace in Ithaca. She creates an order that's established through Odysseus. And remember, she finds Odysseus to be favorable, right, in her eyes. So think about this as a kind of determination, like Odysseus's destiny is to be the king. It's not like any Joe Schmo's gonna kind of walk in there and sort of do whatever, like try to, like, even if they were able to get the bow through the axes, like, this is not their destiny, and the gods are not just gonna allow some random person to just go ahead and take the throne of Ithaca. So Odysseus is helped so much by the gods in this fashion. Whereas other people, average people, even men in Odysseus' crew, they don't get that same treatment. There's another component that I want you to pay attention to, though, is opposite of the determination, there is free will. And so there's this sense in which Odysseus has agency, and he uses it quite often. And partly because he knows the gods are on his side, so he decides that he's going to participate with them in creating the order that Athena wants at the end, right? So he goes back to Ithaca. He dresses as a beggar, but it's not really like Odysseus becoming a beggar in attitude. He knows he's going to take the kingdom back. He's just kind of biding his time a bit, right? And Telemachus ends up finding out that Odysseus is the beggar, so he sort of helps his father along as well. And all of this is part of the trickery of Odysseus. By the time that book 23 comes around, Penelope still doesn't even really believe Odysseus is who he says he is. And if book 21 is about determination and free will and how Odysseus works with the gods and participates with them, book 23 is really about belief. And remember what I said early on, that all these Greek tales often are morality tales, in the sense that they're always trying to say something about how we should live and how we should behave in society, in the world, right? So think about like a simple tale like The Tortoise and the Hare, for example. Tortoise and the hare is fast, can easily beat the tortoise, but gets distracted on other things and decides not to go through the finish line as quickly as the hare can. And the tortoise, being the slow and steady runner, or if you call it running, that the tortoise produces, he's able to cross the finish line before the hare. Okay? So what's the morality? Well, if you're slow and steady, you'll get there, right? Or if you have humility and you just keep going, right, you'll get there, right? So these morality tales that I'm talking about are produced oftentimes in these Greek tales as well. So each book of the Odyssey has its own sort of, its own plot, but also its own sort of morality that it wants to produce or give to you, right? So if book 21 is about determination and free will and how we participate with the gods, but of course, not everybody gets to participate in the same kind of way. Book 23 is about belief, and it's about Penelope's belief, about whether or not she'll trust herself to not only Odysseus, who is a great warrior and just favored by the gods, but also in the gods to protect and to entrust her own destiny to them. Because remember, Odysseus' destiny is wrapped up in Penelope's as well. Penelope is her destiny is to be the queen of Ithaca, serving at Odysseus' side. And so her belief is very important in this situation, right? And in fact, she's kind of the one that comes up with the idea of the competition, because she accepts the idea that Odysseus is dead. So when she sees Odysseus, she actually is thinking to herself, "Oh well, I don't know if I can believe it. My eyes might be tricking me, or a god might be tricking me." And you can think a little bit, as a parallel to doubting Thomas in the New Testament, where he sees the risen Lord or hears about him, especially and through testimony. But he says, those things may be deceiving me, right? It's not until I touch the holes in his hands that I'll believe he's here with us, right? So Penelope decides that she's going to set up a scenario where she moves around her furniture and her bed, and see what Odysseus says, and he responds exactly as her husband would, which is to say that he's able to account for every single aspect of their marital bed, and he's able to recount all this intricate detail, which is kind of a weird detail, I think, as a reader, maybe a modern reader, because I'm married and I have a bed, but I don't know every detail of it. I couldn't tell you those things. I mean, I could just tell you it's a bed, and that's pretty much it. I think it's like a wooden frame, right? So kind of a weird detail, but Odysseus is able to know, and this satisfies Penelope, and they're able to sort of reconcile again. But that doesn't leave things exactly how they're meant to be quite yet. After they get together, in book 24, Laertes, Odysseus' father, believes that Odysseus is dead. They kind of reconcile, and I know you guys weren't supposed to read book 24, but I wanted to just go over the fact that of Athena's help for Odysseus. In book 24, you see that there's some people that are rising up in order to defeat Odysseus, given the fact that he's killed their sons. And so what they decide to do is they go after him as a way of sort of avenging their family. But somehow Odysseus is able to catch wind of everything, probably through the god Hermes, who isn't physically as powerful as the other gods, but we often think that what's most important is physical prowess or the ability to defeat somebody in battle. But actually, Hermes is one of those gods that proves that that's not the case. Hermes is able to give messages, right? Like announce things, herald things, and by giving a message, he actually becomes one of the more powerful gods, because words can have the opportunity to kill or to lift up or to save an empire, right? So think of this battle that's going on between them, or this conflict that's starting to arise, as man, could this be the beginnings of another war that's taking place? Well, the gods, again, being favorable to Odysseus, do not allow this to happen. Odysseus is favored by Athena, and Athena decides that she's going to help them out, and she helps them out by not only killing the people that were standing up against Odysseus, but also by making everybody forget about everything, about the entire war. And this is a trope or a literary device called Deus ex machina, which means it basically means that when something occurs outside of the frame of what's happening, to help the people that are struggling. Okay, you see this actually if you've ever seen Lord of the Rings, for example. Or Harry Potter, for instance, where Harry's it looks like he's about to, be destroyed by Voldemort. Finally, he's going to be get gotten, and all of a sudden, Dumbledore shows up out of nowhere, right? So Deus ex machina means an unexpected power or event saving a seemingly hopeless situation, especially as a contrived plot device in a play or novel. So this is exactly what's happening, I think, in the Odyssey, where Athena that just comes out of nowhere and she helps out, and it's favorable to Odysseus. Typically something in the modern novel that you do not want to see, right? Like in modern novels, you usually want people to experience a kind of a real sense of what's happening. But then again, contrast this to Night, which I know we've talked about it a bit in our one-on-one meetings, where the book Night is such a hard read. It's such a book filled with intensity that by the end of it you feel so negatively. You feel so down. But at the end, something from outside the concentration camp does help them, right? It's not Athena, it's not a god, but it's the U.S. soldiers who are come to liberate the concentration camp. And so, could you call that a Deus ex machina? Maybe not. It's something I think to wrestle with, but I think it's something used even in our modern times today in many ways that kind of speaks to our desire for a kind of salvation outside of ourselves. You see that a lot, I think, in especially these sort of battle scenes or scenes in which people are very hard pressed, or like it seems like the plot is leading towards destruction. Something from outside them comes to save them. Okay, so I'll leave it there. Those are some of the major themes I think that you should pay attention to. I also left in my CCA a bunch of questions that I'm going to be drawing from for the quiz. If you want to take a look at that as a kind of guide for you to sort of be conscientious of what's going to be on the quiz, and I look forward to seeing you all later. Thanks, everybody.